Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first annual Your Grey Horror Matters show Symposium. I don't. What are we calling this? It just occurred to me.
Your Grey Horror Matters show. That's a wonderful just amalgamation and mashup of these two things. I love that. That sounds great.
All right. Well, for all of you out there listening, I am Jonathan Inbody, the writer, director, producer, creator of Grey Matter, an Acid Horror Anthology Podcast. And who am I joined by?
My name is Ryan Joseph Murphy. I am the creator, main writer, director, host of the Horror Anthology Podcast, Your Horror Show. So it's good to be here with you, Jonathan.
Oh, dude, I'm like I was just saying before we started recording, I think this is going to be fun. I'm really excited for this.
I'm very excited too. We've talked about this for a minute, and we finally got together and we did it. And we had big plans to do this many years ago, and we didn't. So
yeah, that was three Halloweens ago now?
We're older and wiser.
Yeah, well, older at least.
Yeah, exactly.
So what we're going to be doing here is we're basically going to have a little just kind of talking about audio drama as a form. We're going to kind of talk about our personal experiences with it. We're going to talk about our individual shows. And we're also going to give some advice for people that want to get into the audio drama space. Because something that I've been thinking about in the lead up to this is in a lot of not quite industries, but specific medias or, you know, whatever audio drama is exactly as an art form. Like in a lot of other art forms, you have people that have been doing it a long time that kind of mentor and lead people in. And there just kind of isn't that in the audio drama space, not for lack of trying, but just because it's also disconnected because it's just the internet. And I know for a fact that members of my audience are looking into and making their own audio drama content. I'm sure the same is true of your audience. So if nothing else, at least we can try and give a grounding to somebody that wants to get into this field of what it is, the goods, the bads, the uglies, and kind of get a sense for if this is something they want to spend their time on, which I do think people should.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting introduction to this because I remember when I was wanting to get into creating the show, and I was like listening to other shows and I was checking out other things and I was trying to contact a couple different people, and it was like, it's so fragmented because of the way that audio drama works. They're very small teams. It's usually just a couple people working on these type of shows, much like podcasting in general. I feel like, depending on if you're an independent creator, if you have a huge media budget, which very few of us do.
Right.
And it's one of those things that you kind of have to fail a lot before you get
absolutely.
Good at it. And I failed a lot. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, that to me, like so much of the interesting stuff that I think we'll kind of dive into with the production side is so much of that, like hitting walls over and over and eventually learning like what walls you have to hit and what walls you should have avoided, but no one told you,
Yep. I agree. And, I think the interesting thing about this medium is you are kind of able to really do whatever you want. There's very little that I feel like is, not accepted in the audio drama medium. I think that it is really kind of a big sandbox to allow you to try a bunch of things. Now, that doesn't mean you necessarily will get anyone to listen to said thing, because
right.
that is its whole other bag of chips.
Yeah, we'll get into all that at the end of this.
Yeah, yeah. But as far as people creating things, you can create kind of whatever you want, which is very, very cool and very liberating, I think.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. Like the audio drama space is such a, in my experience, a very positive and a very creative field. Like there are so many people just doing whatever weird thing has not left their head for years that they like either couldn't afford to do in a different medium, or that is just automatically like they heard about audio drama and went, I got a weird thing that I could do for that. Like it feels like so many of the people in this space are so driven by that, like just the feeling that they know exactly what to do with this medium, which is, I feel it's so refreshing. Whereas like as much as I love film and am, you know, aiming for a career in film, it does feel like films kind of just happen by virtue of people just going like, I'd like to make a movie. Whereas audio drama, it feels like there's this real, like, I have a story to tell. This is the way to do it. It's just kind of bursting at the seams with creativity.
Yeah, it's very interesting that way. I mean, for people who don't know me, I worked on the TV show The Voice for 3.5 years, which is, you know, one of the bigger reality TV shows on television. And so, you know, I was at the Universal lot. I was there. Our offices were right next door to Law and Order, Dick Wolf. So I saw that show being constantly edited. And, working in the studio system is just so vastly different than trying to be your own independent creator. And, you know, when I worked there were some great things I learned that I would never take back. At the same time, you are confined to studio notes and you're confined to things that are professional production that they're going to want to do. And it's, you know, it's a multi-million-dollar show that's, you know, being produced. But I think at the end of the day, if you have stories to tell and you don't know where you're going to tell them, audio is such an amazingly low-cost, awesome way to get that going. And I think you and I both, Jonathan, are both people that, like, we're writers, we're storytellers, and we have stories that we want to tell. And we looked at this medium as like, oh, this is a way for us to be able to do that.
Yeah, 100%. Because, like, you know, I'm not industry connected in any sort of way. Like I'm just from Buffalo, New York. Like I'm just kind of making my stuff and trying to kind of piggyback off of that into a career, basically. But so much of this show for me, like the foundation of Gray Matter was basically me looking around at some short films that I had made and going, it's too expensive, it takes too long, and ultimately I'm just kind of unsatisfied with the final project. And when I kind of landed on, not to tell the whole Gray Matter origin story, but I was approached by someone who said, you know, I'm working for a podcast studio. We're looking for an audio drama, like a horror anthology thing. Do you think you have something for that? Actually, they weren't looking for an anthology. That was one of the reasons that it's not, that I don't work with them currently. But like we sat down for a meeting and I said, you know, I have all these short stories. I've written out all this stuff. And basically in the room while we were kind of having this like exploratory meeting about could we work together, I was like, yeah, what if it's like a frame device, like a video store, and there's all the tapes and the tapes are each individual story. And like, it just kind of snowballed from there. And then basically as the other producer who was attached, he kind of had to drop out because he became a father. He had a couple different things. And production was also wildly delayed because of COVID, which ended up being great because it gave me a lot of time to write a lot of scripts. But basically, once it was just kind of me in the room with the scripts, I really just kind of wilded out. And I've basically just been doing that ever since.
I love that. I think that's so fun. And I love that you were like in a pitch meeting and you were thinking of like, well, this is my framing device. And they're like, no. And you're like, yes, I'm going to make it. And
yeah, I'm going to do it anyway.
I'm going to do this. And that's such a cool, refreshing thing to hear that like it literally creativity like this comes from anywhere. And, you know, it's funny because I feel like my origin story is a little bit different in that we were, you know, at the time, this was 2019, and Quibi, if we remember, do we remember Quibi, people? You remember this?
I watch Quibi every day. It's definitely still around.
Yeah, this was the thing everyone thought was going to be the hot new thing. It was very short
quick bites? What did it stand for?
Pretty much, yeah. It was like quick video bites. Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, this thing's going to be the next hot thing. It's going to combine TikTok with streaming, and like, you know, you can watch these very, you know, videos of vertical or horizontally, and it's going to have, you know, all these big people, and they've dumped a ton of money into this thing." And so my agent, I had talked to her and I was like, what if I create like some horror anthology shorts to pitch to them? And she's like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So we wrangled up some money. We got, you know, I've always loved horror anthologies, and I was like, oh, I want to do one with this character, this Mr. Graves character. And so we created these shorts, and of course the pandemic happens. Quibi seemingly goes under because, you know, no one was watching it during the pandemic. Not a good sign. And so yeah, not a great sign. And so it left me in a place where I was like, well, I really want to do this. And like, if I have to do it myself, I will. And so I did. And I think there's so much freedom in that thinking of like just being like, I just want to do this. Now, getting started was a whole different thing because I had no idea how to do a podcast and I had no idea how to make something sound anywhere near good. And that took a long time. But I think the like, you as a creator and people who are listening to this hopefully are at least take away some aspect of like, you know, the doing the thing is a really important thing. Is like just, you know, figuring out a way to get it done if you believe in something to the fullest extent.
Yeah, I'll circle back around to this as we kind of get to the end of this conversation, but like I really can't say it enough times. Like a month or two ago, I was approached by a guy who's in college at the moment who did an interview for me as part of a class, or with me as part of a class that he was doing of like people that work in the like independent creative space, whatever. And something that I really just wanted to hammer home with that, and I also want to hammer home with this, is nobody is coming to save you. No one's going to show up and go, here's $1 million, make the thing you've always wanted to make. Like, especially in the audio drama space, there just isn't money in it. You know, like you just got to make the thing and you're the person that knows what it is. So you have to have your hands in every single part of production.
Well, and I was going to say too, it's, you know, audio drama is so specific. There's like what I could probably count. There's maybe like 20 shows that are probably sure. like really big and self-sustaining and able for them to not only pay their staff of however many people, which is minimal, but also to like have this be something that is pseudo full-time for them. And they might even still have other jobs on the side. And you're so right, Jonathan, about the idea of like, no one's coming to save you. There's a great Mark Duplass quote about that too, when he talks about independent, you know, cinema, and it applies all over the board, which is that you can't wait for other people to go make something. If you have a story in your head, if you have a belief in what you want to say, you should go find a way to say it, and that let it go where it will go after that. But at the same time, like, you making the thing is important. That is art. We need more of it in the world. And so I think that it's a valuable lesson for all of us to understand that, like, if you love what you're doing, keep doing it, and even if there's just a small audience for it, that's awesome. And like, those people are getting, you know, some great joy out of listening or watching it or reading it, you know, whatever it may be.
Yeah, this might be a grim metaphor, but I've used it before and I kind of enjoy it. Like, in my experience, you know, art is a kind of a primal scream into the void, and people need that release. And like, you know, we're born with our throats slashed, and then art is us trying to make something nice out of the blood, you know. Like, it's joyful. It's a very joyful metaphor. Yeah, no, it's very nice. I was going to ask you about your show, because the thing I love about your show is a couple things. Firstly, I love the framing device. The video store thing's great. It's a fun, very relatable thing. I grew up as a kid of the 90s, and so video stores were a thing for me that I always went into and I loved. And, you know, I can tell you have a rich kind of love for anthology. Like, what are your inspirations for your show? What made you kind of graft to these inspirations? And then I also say too, I love your adaptations. Your adaptations are always fantastic. You do a great job with those. What's behind, I guess, like, you wanting to do some of the adaptations, and also you kind of using that framing device, and how you like kind of thought of that? Well, thank you. That's all very nice. This is going to be kind of a big, like, I'm going to kind of take this in parts, but like, it's interesting with like anthology stuff, like horror anthology stuff that I grew up watching, because I grew up watching so much Twilight Zone. I watched it like,
oh, same. That's the OG.
So
it's
good.
The best. Here's the thing. I watched the OG series still probably at least one time through every year. So like, from start to finish, it's so great. So,
and like, I was watching it at an age where it was still very scary to me, because I was a kid too, like, which I think is such an important thing with Twilight Zone, because there are some really upsetting, disturbing episodes in that show. Mm-hmm. And when you're an adult, you get to all this cynicism of going like, oh, you know, that monster suit looks kind of crappy or whatever. But, you know, and then strangely enough, once I started doing Gray Matter, once I was writing the show, that's around the same time that I started watching Outer Limits from the 60s Outer Limits, the one that was coming out around the time the Twilight Zone was coming out. And I realized that like I grew up on Twilight Zone, but my style of storytelling is much more like Outer Limits. So
interesting.
The show is kind of blended the two as it goes. And then, of course, like you have the more kind of delightfully mean-spirited ones like Creepshow or Tales from the Crypt, which like your show gives me so much Tales from the Crypt vibes. I think we've talked about this before, but like it really delights me, man.
That's funny. Yeah. No, that's a great comparison, honestly, of like kind of how the storytelling changes depending on the show. And it's look, my favorite show of all time is Twilight Zone. Rod Serling is my mentor, if I have one, right? Like he's the North Star I always look towards to in terms of like how I like my storytelling to be. And he was so prolific as a writer. I mean, he wrote like 100 and something episodes of the show. He wrote like 60% of the show's output, which is insane.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah,
that dude was the hardest working man in Hollywood for
oh my God,
5-6 years straight. Like
just incredible, man. And so, you know, that's kind of my North Star like yours. But then it's funny enough, you know, I still grew up in the 90s. And so Tales from the Crypt, Goosebumps, and Are You Afraid of the Dark were all massive influences for me growing up. You know, like those shows influenced me. So, I mean, like Tales from the Crypt, I could barely watch as a kid. I was so scared.
Right, sure.
And they were so gruesome and grotesque, and like you said, almost like mean-spirited, because it's usually people getting their just desserts, but they do it in such a grotesque way that it's like it's you know, it's fun. And but you know, I loved Goosebumps, and I loved Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and Are You Afraid of the Dark? Those shows were really seminal for me as well, like growing up as an anthology kid. Like the 90s were just rife with anthologies, man. I mean, we were growing up with these incredible like just array of stories. It's so sad we have so little of this now, but I think that's why I feel like a little bit that's why we have our own shows, is because like we were like, I'm missing this in my life. Like I'm missing these stories in my viewing life, and now I have nowhere else to see them. I want to have them still. And you know, it's funny when you started your show is when I kind of started my show. I think we started literally a couple months apart, I think, or like, you know, 4 to 5 months or something. And I just feel like we both were on the same wavelength about the type of shows we wanted to make. And I love your artwork too. Your artwork is always so awesomely like cosmic and weird. And I just feel like there's such it's a weird yin and yang thing of feeling like I feel like a kinship with your show, with mine as well, you know?
Yeah, they're very much sister shows, because like your art is so like comic book creep show style, like a cover of a Tales from the Crypt comic, you know. Like I feel like they are, well, so I guess getting back to the kind of inspiration stuff, like as like so much of, for me, there's all these different influences, because you have like the Outer Limits, Twilight Zone style of stuff, and then so much of my conscious thought as I was making this show is like, I want this to feel like a Cronenberg movie, like a John Carpenter movie. Yeah. And then I didn't realize too, but as I've kind of gone, I realized there's also a lot of Ingmar Bergman in my show, which is strange. Just because my show has a tendency to be very sad a lot of the time.
I love it. I love it.
Are there like filmmakers or inspirations for your horror show that go into it? Like what are the non-anthology kind of inspirations for your show?
Oh, that's, yes, 100%. I think for me, you know, when I look at some of the episodes that I create, I'm also thinking about films that I also love, and thinking about like, what are the thematic nature of these movies? I think probably similar to you. I'm like looking at like, well, because I think for both of us with anthology, you never wanted to get stale, where it's like you have one, you know, theme for like 5 episodes straight, unless if it's one continuous story that you're doing. You're kind of looking at things like, well, I want to do one about like one of my favorite ones was always Friend, which I did last season. In the 3rd season, it was about a little girl who is making friends with a demonic creature, and she's like raised in a very abusive religious household. And I'm always thinking about like films too of like, well, I love The Exorcist, and I love possession films like The Autopsy of Jane Doe and like other things like that. What can I mine from these movies that can give me some inspiration for something that hopefully will be newer, but with some of the same DNA from like those films that we've seen before it. And so I think for you, I'm sure like this is probably similar to you, is that like we use our inspirations in our filmmaking, like things that we take to do something with it. And I'm John Carpenter for me is like, I mean, he's considered the master for a reason. Like I watch a majority of his films every year, and I love his soundtracks, and I think that's one of the things with your show too. Your soundtrack is always usually really really solid and very like that type of John Carpenter kind of synth wave inspired, and so yeah, I always want to like look at what kind of like. Look at my own inspirations. Like I'm also a huge Evil Dead fan, and I feel like a lot of my voices are like stolen from Evil Dead, and like the you're going to die, those like demonic, like like it's almost funny, comical, but that's what I gravitate to. And like I don't, I've always thought of horror as like you can be really serious with horror and make it very like intense. You can also be really funny with horror and make it funny and make it intense. And that's what I love about the genre though, is that like there's so many subgenres of it, of which way you can go and which way you want to kind of stick. And I think that's really an important part of why we do our show. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious too, because you do a lot of adaptations in your show, which I love, by the way. You've done Edgar Allan Poe, one of my favorites. You've done Lovecraft. I think you've done Kipling as well. I think you did Sleepy Hollow, which is also, again, one of my favorites. What was your kind of like inspiration for wanting to do a lot of adaptations?
Well, so I guess this kind of goes back to the overall larger question of like when I was in development of this, and it was COVID, I was just writing scripts, and I was like, what do I want this show to be? What do I landed on the Carpenter and Cronenberg kind of vibe. And then I just went like, what is the strength that, what can I do in this format that will be the strongest version of this format? And for me, it was being able to adapt stuff that is classic literature, public domain stuff, but it would require a huge budget if you're doing it in film. So this project became, in a lot of ways for me, a very like a bucket list kind of a spot where I could find a story that I love and say, can I fit it into this Carpenter Cronenberg, like modern domestic sadness and weirdness, surrealist acid horror, as I call it, aesthetic. And once I found ones that fit, then it just kind of became easier and easier with each adaptation, because then like, as somebody that grew up reading so much of horror literature, like I love horror literature from like the late 1800s, early 1900s. It is so wonderful. And I've gotten very lucky that the stuff that I love is in the public domain so that I can adapt it. But at the same time, like there's such pressure that comes with that, and being able to adapt these in what I think is high quality ways or in thoughtful ways, and kind of turn them on their heads, or at least develop the story past what it started as. I think it helps relieve some of that pressure, because I do think as a creative person, there is this thing that just looms over you where you go like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not going to do this. What if I die without ever adapting Call of Cthulhu, And now I no longer have that voice in my head.
I love that. What if I die before I can't adapt this great, this great short story? Well, and it's funny because you and I both adapted Pickman's Model, which is, an H.P. Lovecraft story. And like, it's funny because, I don't know if you saw the Guillermo del Toro adaptation of Pickman's Model that he did for his Cabinet of Curiosities.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on it? Did you like it?
I was Cabinet of Curiosities in general, I was kind of middling on, which is a shame. Because
I'm the same way with you. I thought some of them were. I thought the first episode was kind of a knockout. I thought it was really good, and then I thought the rest after that were all over the place in terms of quality, much like Anthology usually is. But I wasn't a huge fan of some of the creative choices that happened in the show. Even though I love Guillermo, del Toro, I think he's just an insanely amazing artist. I wasn't always a fan of where the stories went or which stories that they chose. But Pickman's Model, I thought some good imagery in it. I wouldn't say it was like a 10 out of 10 adaptation, but I thought there was some fun elements in it.
Well, and I think the casting of Crispin Glover, I think is like beyond perfect. It's wonderful.
That was top tier.
That's incredible. You couldn't get better. But then the script kind of just dawdles at a certain point and goes like, ooh, what if there were scary dreams?
Yeah, totally. And it's funny because I always viewed Pickman's Model as kind of like a meditation on how artists get inspiration, and like how like we as artists are mining for our inspiration and what we take from it, and that's kind of why I made it a little bit to a kind of a meditation on AI and kind of like this idea that like AI is just it's a regurgitation. It's not ever going to do anything, but like I think kind of like what your show kind of does with this acid horror thing. I was thinking, what if it was like Videodromy, and we were like kind of having this idea of having somebody using our own mental capacity, technology mining our actual thoughts, and then creating these lifelike images right in front of us. I was like, oh, that could be scary. So that's kind of the way I went with it. But I mean, yeah, what was kind of the inspiration for your episode in terms of what you wanted to say?
Well, it's interesting because like Pickman's Model as a Lovecraft story, like I really like it and appreciate it. But on for me with Lovecraft stories, it's kind of middling because like it doesn't have the stuff that I really love with Lovecraft is where he gets like real weird and dense with the backstory stuff. Where it's like, like Dunwich Horror has this long section that's just talking about like the weird life of Wilbur Whately and all this weird implied nasty cosmic horror stuff. That you never quite get details on. And Pickman's Model doesn't really have a lot of that. It's very straightforward and it's pretty short. Yep. So when I was thinking about adapting it, I was like, the ghouls are a good monster. I can definitely do something with this. But what is a take that I have on this? Because unfortunately, in the century since Pickman's Model was written, the idea of, oh, no, there is a monster is kind of, it's been done a lot,
Yeah, for sure.
And I kind of landed on, what does it mean? Like, what are the things that we as humans, as when we're growing up, like, what are the behaviors that are modeled for us that we go on to repeat or to embody? And the thing I really landed on is like gender roles. You learn gender roles and you learn, in a lot of cases, misogyny or whatever. You learn your flaws from your parents. So my version of Pickman is a misogynist and all the ghouls are female and he wants to keep them because he wants to like keep women in cages, essentially,
Yeah, that's great.
Like so much of the adaptations is just finding something within them that resonates with you and going, can I build the whole thing around that? Does that work? Another example I usually give for my adaptations is our episode Relic, which is about a snowplow driver who's forced into a conflict with the last woolly mammoth. And that one is based on a Jack London short story called A Relic of the Pliocene. And the short story obviously does not have a snowplow in it because it's about like it's essentially a hunter who's kind of a shithead who is telling a tall tale to a guy around a fire being like, hey, I killed the last mammoth. We had this whole drawn out conflict. And the narrator is like, I don't really think any of that happened. But the guy left me with his boots and I took them to a museum and the guy at the museum said, yeah, it's probably from a woolly mammoth. And it makes you think, And for that, I just went, what's an interesting way I can update this and still keep guy versus mammoth without having all the kind of like human chauvinist energy of being like, there's one last being of this beautiful grace of creatures. Let me kill it so I can prove I'm cooler than it, you know?
Right. No, it's a great, I love that. And I love how you're taking these adaptations and making them your own. And I know that your audience really enjoys it. And like, that's the very cool thing, is that you're, like you're saying, doing these things in a short film, feature film aspect would be insanely very, very costly, and just not something that it's like really viable. But what you're doing is you're able to like still convey your voice as a writer and create something that is awesome in terms of its own adaptation. And like, again, I've done it Poe a couple of times, and I love Poe, and I love having his stories, and I've done Lovecraft as well. And then we're gonna do, for season 4, this is spoiler, we're doing This Damn Thing as well. We're gonna do that one, which is a great horror short story. But there's so much great public domain horror shorts that are available, and what you're doing with them is just so cool. And I think that the way that you adapt them is so unique for your show, and it really fits the aesthetic in a great way.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed, like, I remember when you told me that you were going to be adapting Pickman's Model, because you said, like, hey, we're going to be adapting a Lovecraft story coming up. And that was at the same time that I was, like, in the middle of editing Pickman's Model. And I was like, what Lovecraft story? And then when you told me, I was like, this is awesome. Like, our shows being sister shows has never been more perfect than both of us doing Pickman's Model and them being wildly different adaptations. Like that's so much of the joy of our shows kind of having this like sister relationship, is that like it is so cool to see the difference in aesthetics. Like I love, like, well, as I was saying before about the kind of mean-spiritedness, there's also a kind of like, there's a really like abstract kind of literal nightmare vibe that you bring to your stories that I really, really appreciate. Because like I feel like I am such a boring, grounded person in a lot of ways, where I'm like, everything has to be a little bit explained, and I feel like there are episodes where you go like so far in a way where I'm like, I could not do that. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't. It's so interesting, the things we like in other creators and the things we don't like in ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I feel like with your show, and, I think about my buddy Jeff Schmidt's show, Ominous Thrill, as well. And like, a couple of other anthology shows that I listen to and I'm friends with. And like, I just feel like you guys are such better writers than I am. I just look at my writing, I'm like, this is crap. It's like, this is awful. And I look at it as, look, it's funny because I very much, like you hinted at when you talked about the artwork, I love pulpy, comic booky, kind of goosebumpsy kind of thing, where I like you said, I don't necessarily need everything explained to me. I hopefully will trust my audience to understand that, if I don't add in the 2 + 2, it obviously equals 4, but you can hopefully put those pieces together yourself. And so, and that doesn't always work. And sometimes it's not as, it's not as in the face as it needs to be. But I really do love the aesthetic of having characters that I feel like are very easy to understand, because when you mention Twilight Zone and Tales from the Crypt, when we watch these shows, we have to know these characters within a minute of them appearing on the screen and what type of character they are, because you don't have, with a 20-minute episode, you don't have, you don't have 2 hours like a movie to develop them and then go through a bunch of different hoops. You're using them as a plot device to get you to where you want to go. And look, I am very honest about this. One of my favorite shows also of all time is The Sopranos, and one of the basis for the original episode Bullet was, well, what if like Paulie was in a hotel room where he murdered a guy, and that guy started haunting him. And that's kind of like what I got for the first episode. And my buddy, Dominic Oliver voiced that character so well. And he's funny enough, he actually read for Tony Soprano when that show was casting. And I think a lot of the times how I approach some of these scripts is just, what would I imagine in this scenario of a favorite character of mine encountering something, and then how would they deal with that? And so a lot of the times I will go back to the well and be like, all right, we're going to do gangsters again. All right, we're going to do burglars again. We're going to do robbers because they're fun and they're evil and they're easy to kill and you don't have any guilt over it. So
see, that's so interesting because like I start from a very similar place of going, it'd be fun to do this kind of episode. And then when I get to the actual writing, like so much of the fun that I have is going, here's a character type that you've seen 100 times before. Like our episode Nosebleed, I think is a great example of this, where he's like the main character is like a day trader. He's a stocks guy in New York City, and he's a huge asshole. And he's basically just, he's isolated himself from everybody in his life because he's just a mean, bad person. And then the course of the episode, basically the fun that you have with it, because he is grabbed by a gargoyle thing and just flown up into the sky. And basically you're following him almost in real time as he just tries to call anyone that might care that he's being flown away, and no one wants to save him because he has no one in his life. And then eventually you're just left with this very quiet, sad, like hopefully you as the audience really feel for the guy by the end, because you go like, oh, like everyone that I encounter every day, even like people that are villains of small stories in my life, like they probably go home and cry, they have quiet sadness in their lives. They have dreams that are unfulfilled. That's the fun that I have with this.
And that's why you're a great writer, Jonathan. That is such an awesome way to view a character that could be written so hollow and written so one-dimensional. And you're conveying this kind of like, this very dark kind of reality that we all live with, which is like we're all afraid to be alone. And like, what does that mean for each person's psyche? And yeah, we might not like them as a person maybe on any given day, but like we're all dealing with it. That's very smart writing, my friend, like very smart writing. And I love the way that you approach some of these stock characters, because you do that really well. And I think that's what great anthology does, like at the end of the day. And that's why we love this genre of making things, because let's be honest, we're in a, audio drama, I would argue, is more like there's so much good serial audio drama being made where like you follow characters in world building, and anthology is tough in the way because you have to create a new world in every episode. You have to create a new vibe, a new place, a new thing that you're going to do for every single episode. And that is just so vastly different than most audio drama, I think.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like, to me, I've talked about this before a couple of times. We do kind of behind the scenes commentaries for our episodes as on the Gray Matter Patreon page. And like something that I occasionally will go back to is the fact that like, I get very kind of stir crazy with if I'm doing like an ongoing series, I really want a series of like if I'm writing it rather than watching it. Like I get very stir crazy about the idea of just hanging out with the same characters forever, because like to me, I just always want to be like moving on to the next weird thing, And like anthology, I feel like is such a great format for putting an idea out and going, how much can I realistically explore this before it gets boring? I'm going to do exactly that and then move on to the next one.
That's such a great way of putting it. And like, it really is like the idea of like, I don't necessarily want to live in this like story forever, but I would like to live in it for 20 minutes. And I would like to see what this world is like for this 20 to 30 minutes and then go from there. And, and it's such an interesting way to look at it. But again, growing up, so many of my vivid memories of watching, television and film were from anthologies and from certain stories. The Nosebleed episode that you talked about, and I remember listening to it, and it reminded me of, I don't remember if you remember the Tales from the Dark Side episode where the girl is a goblin, and she from the movie when she kills somebody,
yes,
and
right,
she turns
yes.
she's a gargoyle, and I was like,
yes.
oh, it's so good, so good.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
but there's some iconic imagery that comes out of these very, short snippets of stories that just hit you very hard, and that just showcases, I think, the power of kind of what we're trying to do in the medium, and it showcases, I think, how big the sandbox is for audio drama as well, because again, there's plenty of shows that have you can listen to an overline plot. I mean, the Magnus Archives is a perfect example of that, where you have anthology that connects to a larger scale. Growing up, I just never really saw that, where it was like, it was when the Crypt Keeper said the story was over, it's over, and like you're going to the next episode. And so I never felt a need to connect necessarily these stories all the time unless I wanted to do that specifically,
Yeah, and I think there's with ongoing stories, I think there is a hesitance to take kind of daring story turns, because you go, well, I have to stay with these characters. Nothing can ultimately change that much. And to me, with anthology, the joy of it is, it is that every episode of the show has an energy that season finales have in ongoing shows, where there's that like kill the actors, burn the set energy. And I love that energy for storytelling, because to me, that gives it such a driving engine that really excites an audience.
Yeah, that's fun. And I think that's why sometimes you see shows like The Sopranos and Game of Thrones and a couple of these other, big shows. That's why I think they had such staying power, because you never knew who was going to get killed on a certain day, on a certain episode. And there was a kind of like very much I have to see this type of energy to that. And then that's the same thing, I think, with anthology to a certain extent. It's a great way of putting that. So I'm curious, we talked about this in the beginning. How do you create your show? What is your process for creating your show?
Well, so yeah, I guess this is probably obviously the production end of this is so specific and is stuff that like we were saying at the beginning of this, it's just kind of hitting the same walls over and over and figuring out which ones you have to hit and which ones you should kind of be avoiding. Like the actual production process, for Gray Matter, I, as the show's sole producer, I get all the casting, I put out casting calls, I find people. A lot of it at the start was actors I had worked with previously, but it was also just, a casting call that I just put on a couple Facebook pages and found some people. And I got incredibly lucky that, Buffalo has a largely underserved market of really good actors. And once I kind of started with everything, the actual production process, I try to schedule all the dialogue stuff to be recorded together as much as I can. Because, my show is a blend of narration. There are some very heavy narration episodes, and there are some that are almost all just full cast acting, radio show stuff. But if it's an episode with probably 2 or 3 cast members, then it's almost certainly all recorded in one room with all the actors together, acting together with me directing. But if it's an episode with 4 or 5, then depending on how the scheduling works out, it's either only 2 actors in the room at the same time, or it's everybody in separate rooms and then edited together. And those ones, then it just becomes harder for me as a director, where I have to go wait, you have to match the tone of the thing I recorded last week. Hold on, let me think about what that was,
No, and that's a great way of, because I record, I'll talk about my failure real quick. I had to record the first episode 5 different times, because, I didn't know what mic to use. I didn't know what kind of recording quality for it to be. I didn't know, certain things for the other actors in terms of matching that quality. And man, it was such a process. It was such an aggravating process to get that first episode out. And I think like you said, most of the time I record everybody outside of the room. And so me being usually the only director, I will talk to everybody and I'll kind of try to get a sense of how I want to combine this together, because I'm not recording in a studio most of the time. But I usually will try to record with people that have good sound setups. And so it's an interesting process of like idea. And I wanted to ask you this too. What is your, like, how long does your writing process take? Because I find for me, man, there's times I can bang out a script in like 2 to 3 weeks, and then there might be times that I can't bang out a script for like 6 months. Like it changes really a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of tough because like I feel like my writing process works. It kind of percolates where it's like I have an idea and I sit on that idea. I just I take everything down that when I think of an idea and I put it in my notes app and I just sit on it and I think on it and I just let it be in the back of my mind as something that just exists. And if in a month or two, whatever, I'll come back to it and go, oh, you know what, that premise I could blend with this character. I could do this with that. That story is actually about my anxieties about this, and I can kind of blend it all together. So like the ideas and outlining process takes a long time, but then like once I work from very extensive outlines. So once I get to the actual writing process, it doesn't take too long because I can just go, right, stick to the outline, add a little flavor, get at the character a little more real than was in the outline. So it's like a lot of things in kind of the creative industries, there's a lot of hurry up and wait, but so far it is, I think, put in pretty good results for me. So I can't really complain about it.
Yeah, that's such a cool way of doing it because I do very little outlining. Usually I will come up with I always come up with a title. I like coming up with a title to get an idea of where I want the story to go. And then I will come up with a blurb that will be what I think the story is going to be about. And then I'll start writing from there. And I will usually rewrite the script like 3 to 5 times where I'll go back, I'll let it sit, I'll go back, rewrite it, reread it, rewrite it again, go back, rewrite it again. And so I do very little outlining in the vein of like, characters doing this. And it's funny because I'm working on an outline with several friends right now, and we spent a good deal of time on it. And it's an interesting, a different way that I hadn't really thought of a long time ago of writing. But at the same time, I've heard other writers say that they just kind of vomit out drafts, right? And then that vomit draft goes out and it's like, cool, I have something and I know it's bad, but I'm going to start going down rewriting, but I have something on the page of which I can rewrite,
Yeah, because I think I treat outlines the way a lot of people treat first drafts, because I get it all down so that I have something that I have a structure that I can rebel against as I'm writing it, because I need something the safety of a structure to go to, but also I need something that I can grow from in the actual writing process. So like I end up essentially having 3 drafts of every episode, or I think the most I've ever done is 4 drafts on an episode. And that's just like a very specific tough one. But I think my outlines are basically what a lot of writers treat as first drafts, so it's a little bit same thing, but just kind of different approach, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm curious too, because you talked about, getting your actors, wrangling them. How many takes do you usually do? Like in terms of you directing actors, what is your process?
Yeah, this is the in the paint stuff that I love and could spend hours on, because like, to me, I'm a writer first, I'm a director to defend the writing, and then I'm an actor when all else fails, essentially, and like, so much of directing, the joy of it to me is working with an actor and finding this kind of like, there's a language to I found, I don't know if you find the same thing, but there's an unspoken language that you just develop with actors of like the vibe. Once you've worked with an actor once or twice, you get into this vibe of they just know what the aesthetic that you're bringing is, and they know how to kind of curtail their work to it. And I think establishing that kind of a grammar with an actor is a way to kind of get at their best work.
Yeah, I like the way you're insinuating that with like, getting into rhythm and getting into like a feel for how you both work. I mean, I normally tell the actors that I work with, give me 2 to 3 takes so that I have options. And then I can hear them. And then, if there's a certain line read I want for something, I'll kind of start giving some adjectives and throwing out some things like, can you do it a little bit more, depressed? Can you do it? Can we try it with you crying? Giving them action verbs to actually do something? Can you pretend like you're bullying this person? And, for me, being an actor and being somebody that still loves to act, like I want to hear those words when I'm trying to convey an emotion, because it's harder to play, just a general motion, but it's easy to play an action that you're getting. And so that's usually my process of wanting to direct actors, is to get those couple of takes so I can get variety. And then also, if we get stuck somewhere, trying to give them action verbs that they can take, and then they can use as their own.
Yeah, I think structurally that's very similar, where it's like I'll do basically 3 takes of the whole scene, and then I'll kind of dive in for specifics. And then when I get like, the thing I try to do as prompts for actors is I usually try to find a metaphor that gets at the emotion, rather than just saying like, this is sad or this is whatever. I try to go like, well, I have a weird gift for incredibly specific metaphors. I'm sure anyone that has listened to my show knows what I mean by that. But like recently I had a recording session where I was trying to express to an actor, being like, this character is a very, like, coming from a place of very alien consciousness. Like they don't really understand at all what this world that they're interacting with. And there's one specific line where they're asking a question, and they have to be kind of equal parts vulnerable and also like genuinely curious and all this kind of stuff in it. And it's like, I could take the minute or so that it took me to explain that, or I can say, I think the example I gave is like you're standing in front of an aquarium and you've never seen a fish before, and you're turning to the guy next to you and being like, so these breathe water? Like, and somehow that just gets at what it's supposed to be,
Yeah, I think too, you were talking about, living in Buffalo, because I've lived in LA now for, 11 years, and I'm very lucky that I know so many incredible actors, and I've had so many incredible voice actors on the show. Getting a chance to have Josh Rubin on the show was just incredible. Getting a chance to have you.
Hey, I was in that episode too.
You were in that episode too, and Robbie as well from Ghost Wax, and to have just a plethora of insane. I mean, we've had Allison Cossette in a bunch of episodes. My sound guy, Brady, who is so talented on sound and such a great actor, has been in a bunch of episodes. It's been so cool to be able to, both pull from my city, in which I've met so many incredibly talented people, and at the same time, meet people from the audio community in different facets. That's also been insanely gratifying to have them involved in the show. And speaking of sound, I know you've worked with your sound guy for the entirety of the show, correct?
Yes, yeah. Jeff Lavin has basically been the editor of everything I've done since college, effectively. Like, he and I kind of it's interesting with the actual labor breakdown of our sound stuff on Gray Matter, because like, as a director, I want to be picking takes. I want to be blending lines. Like with this show, it is more time and cost effective for me to just go through, cut everything down to the takes I want to use, and then send those to him. He assembles it all. He does all the sound design stuff. And like, Jeff is a wizard. He's just incredible. I cannot say enough good things about him as a collaborator, as an editor, as a sound designer. And something that I think is philosophically important to me with this show, when I started into it, I said, like, there's this wealth of royalty-free sound effect sites. And as much as possible, I want us to use sound effects anybody else could use in their productions, because so much of the driver behind this is that, we can do it low budget and so can you. Like, and I think we've paid for maybe 3 sound effects over the 4 years of doing the show, so it's not bad. And it's just incredibly specific things like, oh, we need like 10 sounds of the same kind of dog, which is hard to do with the royalty-free sites,
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, it's really cool because, look, I am not a tech guy at all. Like, that is not my forte. That is not my thing. I have been better at being able to edit stuff, like just to be able to edit it. But as far as actually embedding sound within it to make it sound good, that has just never been my thing. And that was one of the things that I needed to find as like a producer, writer, director, creator, actor. I needed to find someone who had tech abilities. And so, I had a sound designer for the very beginning of the show. Then I switched to another sound guy, and then now I've had Brady for what amounts to about almost a season and a half, I want to say, like almost 2 seasons, and we've become really great collaborators, and he kind of knows what I like in terms of like he has a big sound database and pulls from a bunch of different
I cannot, by the way, I cannot say enough good things about your sound design. Like, that has always been something about your show that really impressed me. And like the step up from what was already very good sound design to the Brady level sound design was so great for me.
I mean, Brady, I can't, like I said again, I can't say enough about the guy. He's absolutely phenomenal. And but I mean, I think with your sound design as well, and what we found in each other's shows is we found collaborators that we really like working with. And I think that is so paramount to any great creative thing. It is really hard to create things on your own, completely alone. It's really tough. And I would urge everybody to try to find at least one creative partner that you can work with that is going to help you to get to that other side of being a creator, because there's certain things you yourself as a creator are going to be great at, whether that's the writing, whether that's the producing, whether that's the acting, the directing, whatever. You're going to find something that you're immensely great at. You probably won't be great at everything, and that's okay, and that's really okay. And it's finding those partnerships that really, I think, drive any creative endeavor to like the next level, and I think it's really important to have that.
Yeah, I guess like. There is this, one of the things that I emphasize, like I said, I did a little interview with somebody from a college class about this kind of stuff. And one of the things that I really wanted to emphasize in this, that I talked about in that, is recruiting actors, recruiting crew of any kind, recruiting anybody to work with you on creative projects. Most of the time, you're not going to have money to offer them, but you can absolutely add value to whatever it is they are trying to do. Like, for all of our actors, when our episodes come out, I also send them links to my Google Drive, which has the isolated voice takes and the finished episodes for them to use in their acting reels. That's something that, to me, should just be standard for all creative stuff, especially like non-paid. You got to have some value add to get your actors there.
100%. I mean, that's something too that I do for all my actors. I always tell them, if you need anything from your episode, if there's a certain clip you want, you let me know. I'll get it to you ASAP. And like I think that, and having, because you and I have dealt with this so much about doing low budget projects with other people, and we never see the footage or we never get it, and it's like, well, this is I need this. Like this is the only reason I'm doing this, is because now I can have something that I can stick on my reel that says I can do this type of voice, I can do this type of thing, and this is going to help me get additional work, and then at the same time I have something that's produced, that's well produced, that actually is being listened to, that I can point to and say, oh, I was in this. And I try to put every actor I work with as well on IMDb as well, so that's another thing that I try to give them a credit and say that they were in this, and so that gives them something as well to say, well, no, I acted in this. And I've worked with a lot of voice actors who haven't done a ton of stuff, who are so talented, it's ridiculous, and I think that that's an amazing thing to be able to do for people.
Yeah, and then like even on the crew side of things, like, again, not to go back to my fundamental thing with storytelling of like this radical empathy idea that like everyone surrounding you has these dreams that are unfulfilled. But I do think that's true. And like, I think as a creative person, I think you have to have a very kind of, you have to find people in your life, and you have to know those people well enough and be close enough to those people that you know what the thing is that they are trying to do, what the thing is that they feel like they have been put on the planet to do. And then you offer them an opportunity to do that. I got very lucky with, Jeff and I have always been collaborators, but John Michael Marinell, who does all of our art, he was just a guy that I worked with. And he and I talked about making comics together and all this kind of stuff. And then once Gray Matter started, and I decided, like, once I had landed on the aesthetic and the idea that, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if all the art was VHS tapes? I went to him and I just said, like, can you give me a comic cover for each of these? Do it as a movie poster. We'll put it in this frame. And with Sam Hunt, who does all of our music, like, she's a singer-songwriter. She wants to work on music. And I basically just said, like, hey, like, I know this isn't the vibe of the thing you want to do, but this is a good resume booster, whatever. I sent her a bunch of John Carpenter shit and was like, can you do like this? Like,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I love the radical empathy idea. I think that's such a powerful thing to add for the crew because, yeah, look, both of our shows run a very tight, small ship. But at the same time, we're trying to create something that hopefully everyone can be proud of that is involved with this and that they could talk about and say, hey, I'm involved with the show and I really like doing it. And I think that there's something very powerful in that, but you can't waste people's time. And I really try to talk to all my actors and tell them, look, if you want to record with me, I would love to, and I promise it won't take more than 30 to 60 minutes. And I try really not to waste people's time because that's one of the biggest things I feel like as well is that if people are doing you a favor, you got to try to make it quick, and you got to have your ducks in a row and make sure that you're telling them this is how I want it. I have a vision, and then they'll go along with it if that's the case. Just make sure that you're upfront and honest with them, and I think that helps tremendously. So I'm curious here too. Your show never takes a break. That's the one thing about your show that I've always. Your show just goes. It's effectively never ending, which is awesome. My show is a season by season entity, which is both a good and a bad thing. But I'm curious. I'm curious why your show never takes a break.
Well, so interestingly enough, we're coming up on our first hiatus relatively soon here. But essentially, one of the things that was so important to me with this show is that I wanted it to feel the way, like, I buy a lot of kind of what people would call like boutique Blu-ray stuff of physical media releases of movies. And there's all these different kind of companies like Arrow Video and all these kinds of things that put out these really kind of bougie little, here's a 4K of Larry Cohen's The Stuff, and here's all the behind the scenes documentaries, and it's got new art and all that. And like the experience of getting that in the mail is awesome, as like it engages that collector part of your brain. And I wanted this show to have that same vibe. I wanted every month, once a month, when it shows up in your feed, for you to go, oh shit, the new gray matter. Yeah, here it is. And I think hopefully once a month is often enough to keep that feeling going. And it also kind of feels like a comic where, you get it in the mail once a month and you're kind of excited about it. And ultimately with this show too, I just wanted it to be able to be responsive as to very topical stuff as it comes up. So I can kind of shift episodes around and move something in. So it's, whatever. My show gets very political depending on the episode. And
there's a lot to talk about in that arena, so it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I say that not as an apology for the content. I say that as we're not going to get into that right now.
Yeah. Fair.
But either way, like it allows me to be responsive, having a just kind of once a month schedule and usually working pretty far ahead of that. And also it allows me to do kind of seasonal and themed content where it's like, I like to do something kind of cosmic horror-y in April. I like to do kind of winter stuff in the winter. I like to do fall themed stuff in the fall. We did our Headless Horseman for our last Halloween episode,
which was great, which was fantastic. Yeah, I love that. And that is. Oh yeah, no, keep going.
Oh no, sorry. I just, my last thing on this is just I think it makes when you make art that feels contemporary with its audience, I think there is an excitement there that travels through it to them of going, oh, it's October 10th. Here's the Gray Matter Halloween episode. Here it is. Like it lets you feel the kind of season of it.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, like for me, the good and the bad of the seasons is like, it allows me to plan out a season ahead of time. And so I'm looking at a season and I'm going, okay, cool. There's going to be 15 episodes in this season. And this is where they're going to happen. And, it's going to go bop to bop to bop. And my show, and yours is instead of being monthly, it's bi-weekly. So it's like 2 episodes a month. And so, for me, I'm planning out, whatever, between 12 and 17 episodes ahead of time, where I'm saying these are the stories I want to tell, and then we'll usually try to do 4 to 6 in batches, of episodes being completed, so we have a head start. It's a 2 to 3 month head start on the production, and then we'll keep going. Now, don't get me wrong, as a creator, I've fallen into the trap of, oh my god, I have a new episode coming out in 2 weeks and there's no script yet, and like I gotta write something right now, or like I have an idea that I've been percolating on, and I'm like, okay, this has got to go out now. And I'm the same way as you. I love, we've done 3 Your Horror Show Halloween specials now, and I love doing them around Halloween because it's exactly what I grew up with, and growing up with those Halloween ones. I love doing a Christmas episode or a wintry time episode every time in December. That always makes me very happy. And so those are things that I 100% always want to do. And I think keeping the 2-week format is, every 2 weeks when it's in season is a good way to go. But then at the same time, I usually have like 3 to 4 months where I'm not releasing anything, or at least now I'm releasing stuff on Patreon, which is the grave reading stuff, which, if people want to subscribe to that, you can, and there'll be stuff year round, but there won't always be new episodes of the show year round. And so that's an interesting, difference between our shows. So.
Yeah, and it's like as we're coming up on Gray Matter's first hiatus, because we're going to be taking a hiatus after episode 50 in July. So like, we're going to be off for a year-ish, basically. We're still trying to figure out exactly, we'll still use the feed occasionally, but we won't be producing new episodes during that time. And that's effectively just because I'm finally reaching the end of the backlog of scripts. Like I usually have such a backlog of scripts and just so many things that are written in advance. Like, because I had this, right at the start of COVID, I had just like a year and a half to just write, where it was not safe to produce the show, basically. And that gave me a wonderful grounding and this wonderful ability to kind of, look ahead for the next year coming and go, I'm going to grab like 9 or 10 of these, and then I'll write a couple more to fill the spaces that I have. But at this point, I'm just reaching a point where I don't have the time to work on the scripts the way that I want to. I don't have the time to write as many scripts as I want to. So I just got to take some time off, build up a new backlog, and start again. And then, presumably we'll see how long that goes before I take another break. But I have loved the experience of making the show. I cannot wait to get back to it. And I'm so excited to just dive back into writing it, because the experience of just having the blank page in front of me is like the most electrifying shit in the world. I just love it so much.
Yeah, and that was the thing too, when I went through a little depressive episode this past year where, I was like facing burnout, and I was pretty depressed for a couple of months. And, when I started to come out of it, I was like, I missed the show. I really missed the show. And like, that's why we come back to this and why we keep doing it. And then you start getting back into like being like, yeah, I can't wait to write again. And now that I'm finishing scripts for the newest season, I'm like, oh, I really, really love this show. And I still have stuff I want to say. But sometimes taking the break is necessary for you to recharge and for you to get back into it, and then have yourself the ability to say, oh yeah, that's right. I really, really enjoy what I do. I'm sure a lot of people who have listened this far are probably curious about like, how do we market the show? And how do we get people to even listen to these things? Because I think the last time I heard from you on this, you were over 250,000 downloads. Mm-hmm. As of right now, our show is now over 200,000 downloads and is creeping up there. So what is your advice to people in terms of marketing the show?
Well, I think so much of it goes back to kind of the start of this conversation, talking about development, because you as the person who is kind of, as the director, the producer, whatever, the main creative force of your show, you have to know what it is, and you can't have an ego, but the show needs to have an ego. That's kind of a paraphrase of something that David Lynch said a lot with his projects. But like, you need to know what the show is more than anybody. And once you know what the show is more than anybody, hopefully from that you will understand who the audience is, and then you can just find where they are. Because ultimately, the people that are fans of the stuff that you're a fan of, they gather somewhere, and it might be tough to find them at first, but once you found them, that is a built-in audience, and then you can just expand from there.
Yeah, that's such a great way of putting it, of finding the audience where they are. And look, to be honest, and I'm sure you use this as much as I do, Reddit has been a great resource to be able
Yes.
to, the audio drama subreddit is great because you can actually promote there. But then there's other subreddits that I think you and I both posted in, which is like the Lovecraft subreddit, and like there's other subreddits within like that website that you're able to do. And then what I always tell people that are getting into this is like, I don't think it's talked about enough how important podcast cover artwork is. And that's something you have with your show and I have with my show. And we might, they're different sometimes a little aesthetically, but it's the same idea where every episode is having its own unique cover. I can't stress how much that I feel like gives life to people wanting to find the show and liking what, and having the artwork be something that is telling you what you're about to hear and leading people in because of that. It's really important. And, I think you and I both, I've also done feed drops with a lot of other shows. And I would encourage, audio drama creators and just in general podcasters, if they're listening to this, feed drops are the ultimate weapon in terms of like you getting other listeners to listen to your show. Because at the end of the day, it's one of two things happening with your show. Either someone is talking about it to you as a person-to-person type, thing where it's just word of mouth, or you're listening to it on a show that is similar to yours, and you hear a trailer or you hear someone say, "Oh, you should check out Gray Matter," or "You should check out your horror show," and then they go and check it out and they're like, "Oh, I like it." Those are really the best ways to market things. Spending money on a host of marketing things is usually a bad call, in my opinion. I would not recommend it. And I would always recommend is try to make friends with as many other like-minded shows as you can that are similar to yours, that are going to say, "I love this type of show. Here's another show I think you might like." Those are going to be the listeners you really want. Those are going to be the way to get to get those people to say, "All right, I'm going to check this show out." And I'm telling you, it works more often than not. That's the way to go.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Like, paying for advertising, especially in like today's market, like I would just encourage people, if they're thinking about paying for advertising for a creative project they're working on, when was the last time that you clicked on an ad that you saw somewhere?
Yeah, I didn't know. It's so minimal.
Yeah, and it's like, then I guess too, like, the other thing with branding and marketing is the quality of the show will also drive the audience. Once you have found your audience, if your show is quality, they will also start to spread it. Like, I cannot say enough great things about the Gray Matter audience. Like, the audience that I've cultivated they're very cultured, they're very smart, and they're incredibly warm and kind people. Like, they have been so wonderful at showing up in recommendations posts on r/audiodrama and just going, it's a good show, it's Gray Matter, and there's so much of that I'm not seeing too, that is just all over. And like, an audience gathers momentum as it grows, and your job as the creative is just to start that ball rolling and occasionally check in and see what the speed is like and see if you can push it a little more.
Yeah, it's such a great point too about the audience. I mean, like you love your audience, I love my audience. I mean, I've gotten a couple messages in the last couple months just being like, "Hey, when's the show coming back? Is the show coming back soon? I miss it." Like, and I'm like, it's so cool to hear that, and it's so cool to hear that people are like, "I really want to listen. I really want to listen." And when I usually my thing that I say at the end of every episode is, if you could tell one person about the show, just one person, that would make a huge difference. And like you said, that's a cascading rolling ball that it is just going, one person leads to one person, leads to one person, leads to one person, and then it gains momentum like that. And eventually you get to a point where I'm sure you and I are on the same page here, as are some of my other friends, creators. I might not look at my Spotify followers or whatever, Apple followers for whatever, a week or a couple days or whatever have you, and it's like, oh cool, there's 10 more people, there's 15 more, you know what I'm saying? Like, it becomes a point where you're not even really geared towards that anymore. You're just geared towards, how do I make the best possible stories to keep people wanting to listen. And that's where you hopefully will be at a certain point where it's like, oh, this is what I really want to do.
Yeah, I could not agree more. That is all, especially for anybody that is wanting to embark on their own audio drama journey, like to move into the kind of the financial reality stuff of it. We don't have to be as, this stuff hopefully will not depress people, but like, I have never consistently, I have not made my seed money back from Gray Matter. Like, it didn't cost very much to start up, but there's just costs involved with podcast hosting, with websites, with all this different kind of stuff. And like, ultimately, shows like this, if you want to create a show like this, you should know that you're creating it as a loss leader, in the same way as like cheap soda at a gas station is a loss leader. It's not about making money off the product. It's about getting people in the door and getting them to like you as a creative force and to be able to build an audience and to build a career off of people liking and knowing and seeing your work as high quality.
100%. And that's the same. I mean, look, I look at it as like investment for a short film, right? Short films, you're almost never going to make your money back on a short film. It's almost impossible. But you're making them because there's a creative thing inside you that wants to say something, and you're making something that is a calling card now, that hopefully is like an example that you can point to and say, oh, well, I directed this, or I acted in this, or whatever, and now people can see it, and then they can start hiring you to do something. This is much the same with audio drama. And at the same time, you and I think both just really love telling these stories, and I'm like, hey, I want to keep doing this because I enjoy it, and like I know it's growing at its own pace, and that's awesome. And look, the rule in podcasting for many podcasters and this medium in general is you're not even going to see real growth until you hit 100 episodes. And
Sure.
For audio drama, that's a really hard thing to get to, by the way, because you have to write scripts or you're adapting scripts, and 100 episodes could be 4 or 5 years, but guess what? It's a marathon, not a sprint. If you really enjoy doing this, you'll spend the time to do it, and you'll figure out when we get there. I mean, look, I'm sure you've heard, as we have all in the media heard about the success of Obsession, the success of Backrooms, right? Kane Parsons was on Reddit scouring it, and then started doing his own YouTube videos and slowly grew it to a huge mass audience that then got the attention of somebody else. Curry Barker was the same way. He was making YouTube funny sketches that slowly grew an audience that people, saw. Everyone starts from zero. Everyone is going to start from the same exact place that we all start from. It is up to you as the creator to find out what is working, and failing is the necessary way of doing this. It is okay to fail. Fail 1,000,000 times if you have to, but keep failing, and fail fast, fail quick, and then get back up and do it again. Because every failure is going to lead you to the next potential success. And that's the way you want to be. So,
yeah, and there's like, we are, thanks to the success of stuff like Backrooms and Obsession, and there's been some stuff before that too that kind of leads into this, but especially as like the dawn of the YouTuber filmmaker is kind of on us, with like Iron Lung as well as another example.
Oh
that,
yeah. I mean, and I loved,
I
was going to say, I loved how Markiplier, I love the idea of he just cut out distribution completely and said, I'm going to go do this myself, which is so gratifying and freeing, because I feel like that's what we do in podcasting, is that we have we have Spotify's and the Apples and stuff, but this is all coming from an RSS feed. And so this is we're not being controlled by anything else. Like, if all of these things failed, you could still go to a website and still listen to the podcast. And that, I think, is a very freeing thing in our world of being mass controlled by algorithms. It's like, cool, even if Spotify were to go away, you could still listen to the show. And that's I think a really cool thing.
Well, and I think we're in a media era that, it's so easy to be kind of defeated and crestfallen by, where you look around at like AI and all this shit. And like, I personally, I've had a couple different moments where I look at my work and I know that it's quality. I'm happy with what I'm putting out, but I do go, oh, I'm just putting this out so it can be scraped by 10 AIs to make money for some asshole billionaire who's pressing the kill all poor people button every second of every day. And ultimately, you know, I think it would be better if all those billionaires were killed horribly? Yeah, I would. But, you know, but regardless of that, if I had the kill all billionaires button, would I press it? Well, you know, wouldn't we all? Anyway, but regardless, since I do not have that power, there is, I think letting yourself feel defeated by this stuff is to miss the forest for the trees, because we are living in an era of unprecedented indie success right now. It is even just the small era that we're in right now because of Obsessions and Backrooms and all this stuff. Like, but overall, the internet has democratized information. There are people trying to end its ability to do that. But right now, still, the internet has let you find your audience wherever they are. You can find them. You can do it. You know what your show is. You can absolutely make your show. You can find people that are committed to it. You can get them to work with you. If what you are making is good, you can make it. People will show up and listen. And there is no more defeated than we can all be than the way we feel all the time. So you might as well try and do something interesting with your life, you know, because the alternative is getting to, hopefully, to old age and then looking back and going, I guess I could have tried something, you know, like you just got to do it.
No, and 100%. And that, you know, to say at the beginning is like, just start. You just start. And that's the hardest thing. There was a great, like tweet I think I saw, or like whatever, the little snippet, but it was from a writer who was effectively saying, like, if you were to write to start 4 pages a day, you'd have a feature done in like 20 days. Mm-hmm. And like that's how quickly it can, you know, it can come. But you have to just be consistent with it, and you just have to figure out, I think the hardest part for us is as creatives is you have to put the self-esteem hat on and say, I know that my writing is not as bad as I think it is, and and really say to yourself, this can be rewritten, and it can be rewritten again, and then it can be rewritten again, and eventually you will get something to where you go, wow, this is pretty good. But you got to put the work in. It's not going to come without you doing that, and it's not going to come without you spending some time alone with your thoughts, without a cell phone, without a TV, and really just saying, what do I care about? What is my voice? What do I want to say? And then you'll start to see it come through. And it's a pretty magical thing when that happens. And I couldn't agree more about the idea of just please, we need more artists in the world. Please don't give up on creating your stuff and show us. We don't even know that we need it yet. That's how impactful it is. Because once we see it or hear it or read it, it's going to be that amazing. And so I think that's really powerful. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, like, I guess lastly, because I don't want to just turn this into just us encouraging each other and ourselves and everybody else. But, but I think, like, lastly on this, like, the world will always have sadness and pain and all these horrible things that are going on. And that should motivate us to, first of all, change the world and improve it. But it should also make us realize that, like, suffering is the basis of all organic life. So, like, any joy that you can find ever is a beautiful thing and is worth pursuing. So, like, you are not connected to a studio. You are, you know, if you have nothing to lose, that's a great place to start from, because you can look at yourself and go, what are the sad, weird, fucked up stories that I want to tell? I'm just going to do that, because there's not going to be some asshole in a suit telling me it's stupid or it's too mean or it's isolating to an audience. And you can just do that. Like, Gray Matter, I get away with the show being really sad a lot of the time in a way that I don't think I would get away with if it was being made by a studio, because I think people would go, but is it exactly commercial for the thing to be about, you know, how organic life is a series of terrible pains, that existing as a body is a horrible thing, and that it's terrible, you know?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And I mean, like, at the end of the day, like you said, it's like that thing is what's driving us. And, like, you're right. It's bad things happen every day. And that shouldn't stop the joy also from happening, because that's the yin and yang of life. And so get out there and make your thing and do it. And don't let don't let all this other stuff win, because it's not worth it. It really isn't. But yeah, no, I agree with you completely on that. It's really, you have one life and you can choose how you want to live it. And for me, it's like, I want to do things that are going to make me happy, and hopefully make the people that listen to what I create or watch what I create happy as well. And even if that's one person, I'm not going to lie to you, man. When I started the show, I said, even if 100 people listen to an episode, I'll be happy. I've eclipsed that a long time ago. And it's one of those things where I'm still just like, every episode I release and we see I see the numbers. I'm like, wow, that's really cool that many people want to listen to this. It's a really gratifying feeling. So, yeah, it's impactful for sure.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way, where to me it's always, because I'm a very self-critical person in general. To me, I always look at our download numbers and I go like, I look back at the first episode and look at the first 7 day, the first 30 day, the first 90 day downloads, and I go like, man, my standards for what made me happy used to be so much lower than they are now.
Right? I know.
Now I'm not happy, no matter what I get.
I know. That's such a true statement. Such a true statement. But yeah.
So I guess then to kind of wrap this up, we're going to talk kind of plugs. We're going to give our websites and our Patreons and give people a chance to follow each other's shows, because I cannot recommend your horror show highly enough. So, is there any last piece of advice that you would give to an audio drama creator? If there's somebody out there that has not started any development, that has not done any of this, but somebody that is listening to this conversation and either they've always felt like they should do something creative, or it's occurring to them to the first time that they could, is there any piece of advice that you could give them? Doesn't have to be some big silver bullet, but is there any small thing that you could give them, not as an encouragement, but as just a real specific piece of advice?
Real specific piece of advice. I would say to look across the landscape of what shows are out there and say, what can I add to this that's going to make it different? And that's what I really, when I looked at when I started this show, I was like, well, there's not a lot of anthologies that are similar to Tales from the Crypt out there. And that's what I like. And that's what I want to do. And that's why I wanted to start this. And I really looked around hard, and I saw shows that were defunct. They had no more episodes, or shows that went, whatever. Their season ended, and that was it. And I just said, cool, I want to do this, and I'm going to make as many episodes as I can. And that's what I'm going to do. And I would encourage people to just look around at the landscape and look around, like what type of show do you want to make, and be like, okay, is there anyone making that show? If there is, cool, how can I make it different and make it my own and do my own thing? Because I promise you, if you look at it like that, plenty of people will want to listen to it. I'm curious, what's your piece of advice?
Well, that was going to be basically exactly my piece of advice.
Wow,
so back on the us being simpatico train. So then, I guess let's get into plugs then. Do you want to plug your horror show? Give people the kind of 1 minute pitch for anyone that is not familiar with it at all.
Yeah, if you haven't gotten the drift, Your Horror Show is a anthology podcast heavily inspired by Tales from the Crypt and Twilight Zone. We have 50 episodes. We completed 3 seasons of the show. We're about to release our 4th. By the time this comes out, the 4th may already have been released. If not, it will be released very soon. And yeah, it releases bi-weekly. Every episode's about 20 to 30 minutes. And if you like these types of anthology shows, you will love ours.
All right, and
I was going to say, you can find it at www.yourhorrorshow.com, and you can find us at Patreon as well. If you do want to become a Patreon member for $5 a month, we do have Grave Readings, which is the series where Mr. Graves reads, short stories, horror poems, other things, and then we also have ad-free episodes on the feed as well. So yes, and I cannot recommend Gray Matter enough. So yeah.
And we'll have links to all this in the show notes and all that. So if you're listening to this right now and you're like, oh, that sounds fun, scroll down, click on the Your Horror Show website, listen to an episode. I cannot recommend it highly enough. And anyway, my show, Gray Matter, an Acid Horror Anthology Podcast. It is, full cast and narration, kind of mixed blend audio drama. that is very kind of inspired by David Cronenberg, John Carpenter, and then we also feature original stories and adaptations of classic horror stories from authors like H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe, H.G. Wells, a lot of the guys that I grew up reading. We are weird and sad and unpleasant. We are gross. So there's a lot of body horror, there's cosmic horror, and a lot of creature features. So if you want something that's a little too real for you, while not being real, that is our show. I cannot. That is the most warning that I can give, I suppose.
If someone had to listen to one episode of Gray Matter, what would you choose?
I guess I would say people should either start with either the first episode, Room to Grow In, which, not to spoil, I don't think, but it's about a guy having a horrible, slow body horror transformation. Or I would say if you want more of our literary style of things, listen to our episode, The Dunwich Horror. I think that's episode like 21-ish. That's an adaptation of one of my favorite Lovecraft stories, and I think that episode is like the peak of our quality. What about for your horror show?
Yeah, for your horror show, if you want to start with episode 1, Bullet, I think it's a great start. That is effectively a hitman being haunted by someone that he killed in a hotel room. Or episode 3 is also great as well. I'm blanking on my own show's episodes right now. I'm actually looking at my podcasting and being like, what was that episode called again? What am I have so many episodes. What is that called?
We've made a lot of these.
Yeah. It's called Leviathan. That is the third episode of your show. That is my kind of take on Evil Dead meets Alien. So if you like possession, aliens in space with creepy demonic voices, I think you'll really like that as well.
And I cannot recommend Leviathan highly enough. That's probably my favorite episode of your horror show. So
there we go. See, boom. I got a recommendation from the man himself. Too.
I got to give websites. So, okay.
Yes.
So graymatterhorror.com. That's GRAY matterhorror.com. Or you can look us up on patreon.com/graymatterhorror. We do a bunch of different stuff there. You can find ad-free episodes. We do creative commentaries that are like director's commentaries for films, except we're not listening to the episode as we're recording the commentary. But it's just me with members of the cast or crew talking about the episodes, our inspirations, all that kind of stuff. And then relatively soon, we're going to be doing some RPG stuff on the Patreon. So it's going to be interesting. We'll see. That's going to be a fun experiment to do.
I love that.
But you can also read bonus short stories written by me. These are short stories that either I published long enough ago that the rights have reverted, or that short stories I wrote that never got picked up. So, it's a smattering of, if you like the weird folds of my brain, you can find more of that at our Patreon page. And either way, this has been so much fun, man. I'm so glad that this finally happened. We've been talking about this since we did that Halloween special in 2023 now?
Yeah, it's been a while, Matt. And this was so great, Jonathan. You're just you're a wonderful person, but you're an amazing creative, and it's just it's really nice to talk to somebody who's doing something similar to you, and be able to kind of spitball back and forth, and to hopefully give people, a little bit of advice, encouragement to go do their own thing. I think that's really important in the timeline we're living in right now.
Yeah, I cannot recommend your show highly enough. I think you do a great job putting it together. It is such an incredibly fun and brisk listen. Your show, like, there is never a moment, like, I always worry that people listening to my show will have a moment where they go, this episode's too sad, I can't listen to the show anymore.
No.
So it means a lot to me that your show is so, like, fun as a central thing, that it always just has this great momentum to it that I really like. Again, I guess, thank you for doing this with me. This has been so much fun. It's been so great to trade expertise. Do we have a closer? What do we do? Are we going to sing a song? How do we say goodbye to these people?
What do we do here? Yeah, no, I think you should take us out as the video store clerk, and then I'll do a Mr. Graves little quip and a laugh.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay. So I guess as the clerk, I should just say one last time, be kind, rewind.
And I guess I should say, as Mr. Graves, keep your eyes closed or you'll see me there. That wasn't great, but I mean, we tried. So,
no, but the laugh is good no matter what. So.
Exactly.